Rub me like a Hellcat.
Hi guys, it's Dr. Gary Palmer here, and thanks for inviting me along to the Sweat Cave. Quick question: are you riding or are you training? What are you doing, David? I'm gonna throw it back at you. I'm gonna throw it back at the interviewer.
I try and set out with a goal in mind.
Yeah, but how often does that happen? If I'm talking to my clients, for instance, nightmare scenario, and there's some names that we can all come up with. We all know there's a certain KW, and if he sees a rider up the road, it's rabbit mode. He wants to go after them. You know, forget about the fact we've got a steady heart rate, a steady power output we're trying to hold. There's a rider up there. Now, the difficulty that I'm facing at the moment, and I'm absolutely loving Zwift. I'm thinking it's great. It's given me some great high intensity sessions. It's given me some what I'm going to call coached sessions that I can dip into and out of, that mix up my riding and making my riding real fun at the moment. You know, I'm loving it. However, I'm finding it, even when I'm trying to climb on and just do something gentle and something steady, I'm getting stuck up into the moment of I'm gonna go faster than I should do, and it's a problem I even see with the guys out on the road. Now, you know, where we live here, it's great. I can go out for a 3-4 hour ride, and you know, I might see a dozen other riders on the road, and they're usually coming in the opposite direction to me. It's rare that I either catch people or people catch me. I mean, it happens, but it's quite infrequent. So the problem is my London clients, where they commute to work, and I call it commuter racing. So, you know, the idea is I'm going to do a nice steady ride into work. It might be 15 minutes, it might be 45. But suddenly I've hit a set of traffic lights and there's a car revving its engine up next to me. What am I going to do? I'm going to sprint away from those lights because I want to get away before the car. But there's another rider up the road, and you know what? I don't want them to draft me because they're not going to say good morning to me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and burn them off. And I'm going for it. So what happens to my exercise intensity? I look at these guys' power outputs, I look at their heart rates, bang, recover, bang, recover. They're all over the place. It's not a steady state ride. And I'm finding quite a few people are doing the same on Zwift. They're not using the full capabilities of Zwift. They're not using that workout mode to allow themselves to do the session that they should be doing, and they're doing the session that somebody else has prescribed or somebody else has put up there. Or, you know what, there's 15 races a day. I'm going to do one race every day, or I'm going to race twice a day today because, you know, the World Bike Relief guys have put on a 5k race, so I'm going to do that. But hang on, I don't feel that fatigued after a 5k race, so I'm going to join in a coaching session in an hour's time, or there's a longer race later, and we start to lose the focus. And this comes back to that big question: are you training or are you riding?
Well, what about these guys, though, Gary, that will say, excuse listeners, if you're a creep, then it's my chair. Nothing wrong with Gary's knees. But if they might say, I never used to hardly train, Gary, and now I'm going on my bike and I'm doing 6 sessions a week on Zwift, and I'm loving all this.
Fantastic.
I'm doing more than ever.
Fantastic.
So what's the drawback?
There's not. And I think, you know, again, my question to anybody, and it's you sat there, my question to the guys, you know, at the other side watching us, you know, in the Sweat Cave, is why are you riding? So that takes it back a stage. You know, what are you exercising for? Are you exercising for fitness? Are you exercising for health? Are you exercising for weight loss? Are you exercising for sports performance? Okay, once we know why you're training, once you know why you're riding, then we can start to say, you want more from your riding, we've got to start thinking about doing some training sessions. Doesn't all have to be, you know, steady and tedious and looking at a heart rate monitor or looking at a power meter and, you know, checking my cadence and what's my nutrition doing. You can do some fun riding, and if you don't, you're going to get fairly bored. So we've got to have that fun riding coming in. But if you're not actually training, you're not going to get fitter. You're not starting to look at, you know, what's this training session about? Today's ride is about X because yesterday I did such and such. Now, in the real world, if you had a major race coming up on Sunday, would you do a fun race on the Saturday?
No.
So why would you consider doing a 1 hour race on Zwift on a Saturday and then doing another hour race on a Sunday, other than the fact they're there? And would you then be doing, coached interval sessions? I mean, again, the World Bike Relief guys have got some great pro style training, PST they call it, pro style training events, brilliant stuff. They're held within weight ratios, 2.5 to 3 watts, 3.5 watt, so you can find a level that's right for you. And the lead rider puts in some great sessions. You might put in a sprint for 10 seconds. You might put in a 1K effort. You might put in a pyramid. We were working, 3 watts per kilo, 3.5, 4, and so on, and then back down again. There's some great stuff that's put in there, but you've got to almost question, where does this fit into in my larger training plan? And what do I need in terms of fitness? And it comes back down, and I'm sure your guys, if they haven't seen it already, will see the review that James brings out, James Gill from Titanium Geek brings out on his fitness that when I assess with James. And one of the things I find with a lot of riders is they don't do enough easy riding. Their easy stuff's too hard, and because they're then fatigued, their hard stuff isn't hard enough. So it's all at this really narrow level band.
So where is that narrow level band then? So if we take Strava, for example, a lot of people will upload their training to, they've got 6 bands.
Yeah.
So we were talking before this, and I said it's almost like your 5 a day with fruit and veg. It seems like a lot of us want to get our 6 a day with Strava levels, particularly if we get on the road in the segments. But so where in that 6 bands is the danger zone that makes us too fatigued to go high? And
well, again, this is the problem with terminology, isn't it? I remember one of my psychology lecturers from years ago, more years than I can care to remember. I'm just trying to think. It would be probably late 80s. Very much late 80s, possibly just into the early 90s, psychology lecturer, and just one day walked in and just wrote KISS on the board in big letters. And it's like, well, what's this all about? And there's the old adage, keep it simple, stupid. I've seen training systems with up to 9 training zones in them. Effectively, I use a 5-system training system. But in essence, with the athletes that I coach, I probably only use 4 of those, and most of the time I only use 2 of those. I keep my training really, really simple. And what we tend to find is that most riders will ride in this middle zone, which different people call it different things. Some people call it sweet spot. I call it mixed muscle. So again, in one sense, that's another 20-minute discussion, 20-minute explanation about how I classify my training zones according to different muscle fiber types. And that's where people train. And the difficulty then is that we can't classify and say, well, this was a high intensity session of a certain type, or this was a low intensity session of a certain type. Because if you're jumping between low effort right up to high effort, and we're spectruming in between, what have I worked? Well, I've done a whole muscle workout. That's great. But then in order to get optimal recovery, what have I really stressed today to work again tomorrow? And so what we find is that you've got this consistent residual fatigue with an athlete that's trying to train every day and trying to train every day across the spectrum. And likewise from that, I'd then look at periodization, where I would actually have segments of training where anything from 4 weeks right up almost to 3 months, I might have a block that's focused on a certain training element. So it might be endurance, it might be that threshold which is about climbing and race pace effort, it might be a speed and power block. Now, the different training phases would have different times allocated to them. But even with an endurance training phase, the sort of the standard base fitness training phase, I wouldn't have a rider only doing endurance work. We can do some top end work, we can do some racing, but actually the predominance is making sure the aerobic system is working and then allowing the muscle to recover properly between training sessions.
Tell me like a Hellcat.